In 1943, a B-24 bomber, the Lady Be Good, took off for its mission, but never returned. No one knew what happened to it. And after 16 years, its wreckage was found in the middle of the Sahara Desert. What happened to the crew? It's April 4th, 1943. World War II is loud and big across Europe and North Africa. Far away in the sandy, hot Libyan desert, there's a small airfield called Soluk, just a dusty spot with planes and tents under a bright sun. A shiny new B-24 bomber named Lady Be Good waits there, its big engines quiet but ready to start, looking strong and bright on the sand. It's part of the US Army Air Force's 376 bomb group standing like a big toy. 9 men are on it, new guys who just arrived in Libya a few weeks ago. Their uniforms clean, but their faces nervous because they've never fought before, like new workers on a job. They need to fly far, almost 1,000 miles, to Naples, Italy, and drop bombs on the harbor to stop enemy ships. But something bad happens on their trip, turning it into a big mystery that hides in the sand for years, like a secret no one can find. Then, in 1958, oil workers digging in the Libyan desert find the Lady Be Good plane, broken but still there, half buried in sand, looking like an old ghost. That's when we learn what happened to the plane and its brave men, uncovering a story of courage, sadness, and wonder that people still love today. 9 good men, all ready for their first big adventure. The pilot, William Hatton, is in charge, a nice, quiet guy but new to battles, leading his team with a calm smile. With him are his friends, Robert Toner, the co-pilot who sits beside him, DP Deep Hayes, the navigator who looks at maps to find the way, John Waravka, the bombardier who drops the bombs, and 5 others, Harold Ripslinger, who makes sure the engines run right, Guy Shelley, who talks on the radio, Vernon Moore, Samuel Adams, and Cecil Lamotte, who shoot the guns to keep the plane safe. These men came to Libya on March 18, 1943, still getting used to the hot, sandy desert and the busy, noisy airfield at Soluk, their faces a little unsure but full of hope, like kids starting a new school. On March 25th, their plane, Lady Be Good, number 41-24301, rolls into Soluk Field, its shiny body catching the bright sunlight, with its name painted big and bold on the side, looking like a hero ready to save the day. Their first big job, on April 4th, is to fly far, far away to Naples, Italy, and bomb the harbor that afternoon, hitting the bad guys' ships to help win the war. At 2:15 p.m., 25 B-24 planes take off from Soluk in 2 groups, their engines roaring loud, kicking up dust and shaking the ground, sounding like a big truck race. Lady Be Good goes up with 13 others in the second group, flying in a straight line across the sky, their shadows moving over the sandy desert below, looking strong and brave. But as they head north, a huge, scary sandstorm hits North Africa, dust and sand swirling everywhere, making it hard to see, like a big fog covering the road, blowing sand in their eyes. 8 planes turn back, too scared to keep going, but 4 push on, including Lady Be Good, their hearts set on finishing the job. By 7:50 p.m., they reach Naples, flying super high at 25,000 feet, way above the city's big guns. But sand and smoke fill the air, blurring their eyes, making it tough to spot the harbor, like looking through a dusty window. 2 planes bomb other places nearby, but Lady Be Good and 1 more drop their bombs in the sea to make the plane lighter for the long trip home, not knowing they're heading straight into trouble. like walking into a trap they can't see. Here's the story of how Lady Be Good crashed. The plane flies back to Libya alone, through the dark night, its engines humming softly, like a quiet song. At 12:12 a.m. on April 5th, Pilot Hatton calls Solok on the radio, his voice worried and tired, like someone lost in the dark. "Where's our base?" he asks. Their direction finder, the tool to find the way, is broken, leaving them lost in the big sky, with no lights to guide them, like a boat without a map. At Solok, the ground crew lights bright flares and shines big lights to show the way. But the crew, still mixed up from the sandstorm, can't see them. It's too dark and far, like spotting a candle from a hill. Something goes wrong. Maybe a bad signal or a wrong compass turn tricks them, and they fly south into the huge, empty Sahara Desert, not north to safety, like taking a wrong road home. For 2 long, scary hours, they keep flying as their fuel runs low, like a car running out of gas on a dark path, with sandy dunes stretching below, quiet under the moon. No help in sight. By 2 a.m. the engines stop, and they can't fly anymore. So they jump out with parachutes, hearts pounding in the night, scared but brave, like leaping from a high tree. They fall into the dark, their shapes glowing briefly under the plane's dim lights, the wind pulling their chutes tight. The Lady Be Good, now empty and silent, flies another 26 kilometers, then crashes softly in the Kalanchio Sand Sea, landing in the sand, buried by dunes, like a toy left in the yard. At Solok, search teams think it crashed in the sea, so they send other planes to look over the water, flying low and searching with lights. But they find nothing, just calm, blue ocean. Lady Be Good and its 9 men disappear, leaving everyone wondering, what happened? It's a mystery that stays quiet for years, hidden in the desert sand, waiting to be found, like a locked box in the dunes. 8 of the 9 crew members land safe after jumping out, dropping into the Libyan desert under a starry sky, their parachutes floating down like big white clouds, soft and slow. They shoot guns and launch flares into the night, bright lights flashing up, their voices calling out across the sandy dunes, sounding scared but hopeful, trying to find each other in the dark, like kids lost in a big field, shouting for their friends. But, oh no, John Waravka's parachute gets tangled up in the wind, and he falls hard, dying when he hits the ground. A fast, sad end, his body left alone in the sand, quiet and still, like a flower crushed underfoot. The other 8, Hatton, Toner, Hayes, Ripslinger, Shelley, Moore, Adams, and Lamotte, meet up, their faces showing worry and a little hope, their clothes dusty and sandy, sticking to their skin, wet with sweat, thinking the sea and Solok base are just nearby. Like a village after a long walk, they start walking north, carrying only half a canteen of water to share, barely enough for one tiny sip each in the big hot desert, like sharing a small glass in a drought, their hands shaky. Robert Toner pulls out his diary and writes about how hard it is, hot days that burn their skin red and make them sweat, cold nights that make them shiver and hug themselves, and no food to eat, wearing them down step by step, like carrying a heavy bag for miles, their feet dragging in the sand. For 8 tough long days, they walk across the sandy dunes, leaving behind vests, boots, and empty canteens in the sand to mark their path, hoping someone will see and save them, like leaving a trail of stones on a path, bright in the sun. They cover about 130 kilometers, their footprints sinking deep into the soft sand, leaving little marks. But they're actually going deeper into the Sahara, not closer to safety. Their direction totally wrong, like walking the wrong way home, farther from help each step. After a while, 5 of them, Hatton, Toner, Hayes, Lamotte, and Adams, get too tired, their bodies weak and thirsty, their legs heavy, their faces sad, and they stop walking, sitting down together in the sand, too worn out to move, looking quiet and still under the sun. The other 3, Shelley, Ripslinger, and Moore, don't give up, holding on to a tiny bit of hope, like a candle in the dark, and keep walking, their figures fading into the far-off, shimmering desert, like shadows disappearing into the heat, small against the big, empty sky. Their steps slow and tired. The 5 who stopped, Hatton, Toner, Hayes, Lamotte, and Adams, sit down in the sand, about 130 kilometers from where they landed, worn out after 8 long, hard days of walking under the hot Sahara sun, their bodies tired and hurting, their faces sad and dry. They have no water left, no energy, and the heat and thirst are too much, like a fire that won't stop, making them feel weak and sick, their mouths dry as paper. One by one, they die there in the sand, the desert taking their lives quietly, their bodies left as still shapes under the bright sun, slowly covered by soft blowing sand, a sad ending to their brave fight, like flowers wilting in the heat, their shadows fading away. Meanwhile, Shelley, Ripslinger, and Moore keep walking north, hoping someone will save them, their footsteps getting slower, their bodies tired and thirsty, their faces sad and sunburned, their clothes torn and dusty. Guy Shelley pushes himself another 38 kilometers, his legs heavy and slow, his breath short, until he can't walk anymore and dies alone in the sand, his body resting still, taken by the desert's harshness, quiet and lonely under the stars, like a small bird, falling silent. Harold Ripslinger, still determined, walks even farther, 42 kilometers past Shelley, about 210 kilometers total from where they started, his strength fading, but his heart strong, like a tired horse pulling a cart, his face set but worn. But he runs out of energy too and dies in the desert, left alone in the emptiness, his body a quiet mark in the sand, small against the big dunes, his story ending soft and sad. Vernon Moore keeps walking too, but we don't know where he stopped. His body was never found, maybe buried by a British patrol in 1953 without knowing who he was, or lost forever in the shifting sand, like a toy dropped and covered up, hidden deep. They all thought help was close, their hope a sad mistake, but they were walking deeper into the Sahara, their wrong path leading to their deaths, leaving behind a heartbreaking story of brave men lost to the desert's quiet. Years and years go by, and no one knows what happened to Lady Be Good. It's like a story lost in the sand, waiting quietly for someone to find it, hidden under the dunes. Then, on November 9th, 1958, oil workers from British Petroleum, looking for oil in the big, empty Libyan desert, make a big, exciting find. 710 kilometers southeast of Soluch, deep in the Kalanchio Sand Sea, they spot a B-24 bomber, still in good shape, even after so many years alone in the sand, looking like a big surprise in the quiet desert. It's Lady Be Good, broken but standing, its fuselage cracked, but guns still working, radio turning on with a little crackle, and a thermos of tea inside that you could still drink after 15 years in the dry, hot sand. Amazing, like finding a hidden treasure in your backyard, dusty but real. People first saw it from the air in May 1958, flying over and spotting it far below, then checked it closely in 1959. finding D.P. Hayes' logbook, which stops after the Naples trip, leaving us wondering what happened next. Like a book with no ending, its pages silent in the sand. In 1960, search teams use helicopters to fly over the desert, looking for the crew, their blades buzzing loud, and they uncover the sad truth, step by step, like solving a puzzle piece by piece. They find 5 bodies: Hatton, Toner, Hayes, Lamotte, and Adams, together 130 kilometers from the crash. Their shapes showing how hard they tried to live, lying quiet in the sand, still and sad under the sun. Further north, they find Guy Shelley, 38 kilometers away, and Harold Ripslinger, 42 kilometers past him, over 320 kilometers from the plane, but still far from Solach, marking their long, sad walk across the dunes, like footprints fading in the wind, small against the big sky. Later that year, they find John Waravka's body near where they jumped, showing his sad fall, still and alone in the sand, quiet like a shadow. But Vernon Moore's body, never found. Maybe a British patrol buried him in 1953 without knowing who he was. Afterward, in 1994, Libyan workers moved Lady Be Good to an airbase, preserving it like a treasure. Some parts went to museums. A propeller shines in Lake Linden, Michigan, honoring Cecil Lamotte. Others joined US planes, but crashes followed, sparking tales of a curse. Lady Be Good is more than a plane. It's 9 brave men, a desert mystery found by chance. Their story lingers in the sand and our hearts. Could they have survived? Is Vernon Moore still out there? Share your thoughts, subscribe, and hit the bell. We'll bring more mysteries soon.